Let's break this down step by step. I'll give you an outline for XRP and XRPL this year, historical February patterns, the CBDC debunk, and then Bitcoin's side with some charts. XRP XRPL 2026 timeline and when things might pump. Most analysts see slow, steady growth early on, with bigger moves later in the year tied to utility ramps, ETFs, and adoption. February 2026, probably not a pump month. Expect sideways or dip. Forecasts put XRP around $1.50 to $1.90, maybe stabilizing near 160 support. No major catalysts right now, and macro stuff could weigh it down. Q1 Q2 2026, building phase. ETF inflows already happened late last year, but more institutional stuff like tokenization and RLUSD stablecoin integration could start kicking in. Look for gradual upside if banks ramp up XRPL use. Mid to late 2026, this is where the potential pumps live. Projections go from $2.15 early year to $8 by year end in bullish cases, like Standard Chartered's call. Key drivers: more CBDC pilots on XRPL rails, real-world asset tokenization, and full institutional adoption post-regulatory clarity. Overall 2026 outlook. Bull cases hit $4 to $14 highs if adoption explodes, base around $2 to $3. It's utility-driven now, not just hype. Historical February for XRP? It's rough. Median return -8%, average drop around 5%. Last February was brutal at -29%. Crypto often sees February weakness anyway, so don't count on fireworks this month. Pumps usually come later in cycles after catalysts. Debunking the CBDC thing with XRPL and XRP. No, XRP isn't becoming a CBDC itself, and XRP isn't turning into one. Here's the real deal. XRPL is a neutral, open ledger, decentralized with validators, not owned by any one country or entity. Ripple built a CBDC platform on top of XRPL tech, so central banks can issue their own digital currencies, like a digital dollar or euro, on it for efficiency. But central banks don't have to use XRP. It's optional as a bridge for cross-border swaps. Ownership. CBDCs are fully controlled by the issuing central bank. Supply, rules, everything. XRPL, XRP? Ownerless, like the internet. No single entity owns it, which is why it's fairer and more neutral. Speed and cost. XRPL settles in 3 to 5 seconds for fractions of a penny, way faster and cheaper than traditional systems or even most CBDC setups without it. XRP as bridge can make CBDC to CBDC transfers instant and low cost without pre-funding accounts. The US has that executive order banning federal CBDCs, so no digital dollar soon. That's probably because something neutral like XRPL, XRP could handle global value transfer better, faster, cheaper, no ownership drama. Countries won't want to commit to one nation CBDC owning the rails. They want neutral ground. XRP fits that perfectly. It's been in the works for years for exactly this kind of cross-border efficiency. Here are a couple visuals on XRPL's speed and how it stacks up, and one on failure rates versus old systems. Bitcoin side with charts. Bitcoin's in post-halving mode, 2024 one, and cycles usually peak 12 to 18 months after. Early 2026 has been choppy. Price around $70,000 to $76,000, down from late 2025 highs due to yields and macro. But the 4-year cycle looks intact. We're not in bear territory yet. Here's a halving cycles comparison chart showing past performance. Current cycle, black line, is tracking similar to previous ones. And a longer timeline with halvings marked. Big runs often come later in the year. Projections point to potential upside mid-year, maybe 128,000 by summer, if history repeats. No guarantees, but the structure's there. Anything specific you want to dive deeper on? Checking the latest on Supercycle and XRP targets. The $8 to $14 range for XRP by end of 2026 is still in play for the more bullish scenarios, like what Standard Chartered and some analysts are throwing out there, tied to real adoption and tokenization ramps. But right now, the market's in a rough spot, so a full-blown supercycle for the whole crypto space feels less certain than it did a few months ago. Bitcoin sitting around 69,000 today after dipping below 70,000, first time since late 2024, and it's down hard from those late 2025 highs. Some big names like Binance's CZ are even backing off the supercycle talk, calling it more like a potential reset or off year instead of endless upside. Stifel analysts are warning it could crash to 38,000 if the trend line holds. Here's a couple of those halving cycle comparison charts. Notice how the current one, black line, post 2024 halving, is lagging behind past cycles right now, still in that early choppy phase. And another analog showing potential for a 2026 drag down. XRP is around $1.6 today, down sharp too, over 10% in the last few days. February's historically weak for it anyway, so this dip fits the pattern. But if utility kicks in later, like more XRPL use for cross-border stuff, the disconnect could flip, and XRP might outperform BTC in a relative sense during any recovery. So, supercycle? Possible, especially if regs clear up and institutions pile in mid to late year, but it's not locked in yet. We're seeing more caution than euphoria right now. If Bitcoin holds support and turns, that could drag everything higher, including XRP to those bigger targets. What do you think?